Hello and welcome. Today we are talking about PowerShell. So what is PowerShell? In a nutshell, Windows PowerShell is an object-oriented automation engine as well as a scripting language. It's designed mainly for IT professionals, that's system admins, server admins, any type of admin working with a Windows environment. It helps automate the automation of Microsoft products. Predominantly Windows-based applications, Windows OS, Windows Server, applications, Office 365 or Exchange, things like that. It provides a compelling new concept to extending the knowledge that the system admins may already have. If you're used to writing BAT file or VBS files for your scripting, you can take PowerShell and grow with it. So basically, it creates an extension to like the Windows command prompt environment as well as Windows scripting host environments and grows. It combines the flexibility of scripting, command line speed, and the power of a GUI-based admin tool. This basically allows you to solve problems more efficiently by helping system admins or other admins to eliminate future manual hours by automating some of these tasks. So we're going to go through many of the core aspects of PowerShell. So then question then becomes, why use PowerShell? PowerShell is well integrated command line in Windows operating systems. If you have Windows 7 or above, it has PowerShell. PowerShell allows you to have full access to all the different types in the .NET framework. So you can use other languages in the .NET framework. It's trusted by Microsoft, it's trusted by system admins in the Microsoft realm. PowerShell is a simple way to manipulate server and workstation components. However, there are some security caveats to that, which we'll get into a little bit later. It's geared towards system admin by creating basically really easy syntax. Lastly, PowerShell is more secure than running just a VBS script or other scripting languages. But PowerShell does have some of their own challenges. So one of the big things is PowerShell's history. PowerShell first seen the light of day mid-2006, and this was in Server 2003. PowerShell 2 came out with Windows 7 and Server 2008. PowerShell 3 came out with Server 2012. PowerShell 4 came out with Server 2012 R2. PowerShell 5 was released as the internal part of the Windows Management Framework, and that was one of the core functions of predominantly today's operating systems. If you have a version of an updated version of Windows, you're probably running either version 5 or version 5.1 for PowerShell. That's the current PowerShell in all versions of Windows. However, that's not the most current version available. Version 7 exists. PowerShell Core 6 was introduced in 2016. Microsoft unveiled PowerShell Core, and it's a decision to make this product cross-platform. So PowerShell 6 and 7 are cross-platform. They're Windows independent and open source. PowerShell 7 is the big push right now, and PowerShell 7 is a viable replacement for Windows PowerShell 5.1. So you can have a near parity with Windows PowerShell in terms of compatibility as well as modules shipped within the Windows platform. PowerShell 5.1 is what's in Windows. 7 is slowly taking over. So what are some of the features in PowerShell? So you can do PowerShell remoting. Basically, PowerShell allows scripts and commandlets to be invoked on a remote machine. You can have background jobs. This helps you to invoke scripts or pipeline asynchronous, so you can run your jobs either on the local machine or multiple remote operating machines. You have transactional. This will allow you to enable commandlets and allow developers to perform certain transactions on, again, local or remote machines. Evening. This command will help you listen, forward, and act on management and system-based events. We have the ability to do network file transfers, because PowerShell offers native support for prioritizing asynchronizing, throttling, transferring of files between machines, and background services, or BITs. So these are some of the main features. Realistically, PowerShell is pretty powerful, and it keeps growing in what it's capable of doing. So how do you launch PowerShell? Well, PowerShell has two main components: PowerShell, and that's the command terminal, or PowerShell ISE. We're going to talk about ISE a little bit later, but these are the two main ways to run PowerShell scripts. PowerShell can be launched a number of ways. Alright, so in our environment, you go to Start, you can type PowerShell. And again, we want PowerShell. This will load a non-administrative PowerShell. I can run PowerShell as an admin. You should get a prompt. That's normal. And you'll notice it says Administrator PowerShell. And you're going to see the location is going to be slightly different where they load. So that's one way. You can also right-click on the start bar, PowerShell, PowerShell Admin. And again, both of those will load PowerShell, either a regular user PowerShell or an admin. So again, we've already said PowerShell uses commandlets, but what's a commandlet? A commandlet, which is also called a commandlet, is a lightweight command used in Windows-based PowerShell environments. PowerShell will invoke these commandlets and the command prompt. You can create and invoke commandlets using PowerShell APIs. Commandlets will follow a verb-noun naming pattern. Commandlets are specialized .NET classes, and they allow you to use the PowerShell runtime instances to invoke executing those commands. Essentially, instead of them being commands, they're just commandlets. They are classes of a program that you can run. So normally a commandlet will start with a verb and then it will follow a noun. Things like get, start, out, stop, set, new. These are commandlets, the starting function, so you know what to do. If you're getting something, or you're starting something, or if you're setting something, you're going to start with those words. And we're going to go through some examples of how to use these coming up. So, what's the difference between a commandlet and a command? Again, commandlets are using .NET Framework class objects, so it can't be executed separately. A commandlet is going to be a command and arguments and functions combined. Commandlets have a few or dozens of lines of code. You can also parse the outputting. You can parse the input, output, the formatting, error, all of that. They're not handled by the commandlets themselves. It's handled by the interpreter. Commandlet processes work on objects, not on text streams and other objects. So objects can be passed as output for pipelining, for example, or piping in other functions, but the actual object itself is not a text stream. Commandlets are also record-based, as though it processes a single object at a time. Most of the PowerShell functions come from the commandlets, which is always in a verb-noun format, never plural. Moreover, commandlets will return an object, not text. So commandlet is a series of commands, which is more than just one line, and it's stored in a text file. That's going to be the starting of our scripts, and that's going to be a .ps1. You can run the commands at the terminal, through a PowerShell terminal, or you can write a PowerShell script. Alright, so some basic commands. Things like get help, get command, get service, get member. So get help is how we get help. Get command, basically get information about anything that we can invoke. Get service, we'll find command lines that start with the word service. So get tac service, it'll do that. Get member or get tac member. I'm going to show you syntax to some of these. We'll show how you can work you can do with an object. So let's go ahead, let's drill down in some of these commands. Alright, back in my Windows machine, I'm actually going to go ahead and get a admin terminal going. Alright, so first get help. You'll notice get is highlighted yellow. It's get help, and so the entire command is in yellow. If you hit enter, you can actually update it the first time. So I'm going to go ahead and update it. Yes. Because the nice thing is, commandlets are being updated all the time. Out you see we're in the B's, the C's, the D's now. Normally when we're using the get help command, we're coupling it with another PowerShell command. We need to know what are the help features of a command. So normally we say get help and a command. I like to just get help to begin with because it checks for updates first. So this makes things way more convenient because there are updated PowerShell commands that the documentation isn't always up to date. So this kind of just makes sure we're working with new, clean content. Alright, it looks like we are close to getting done. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and get tac help. I want to do that on set execution. So what I did was I actually tabbed. So I did set tac exe and I hit tab. If we did just like ex and you hit tab, you can tab through any command, like let's say it's set tac e. You can keep hitting tab and it will cycle through all of the commands that start with set tac e. So for now, we're going to do get help with set hyphen execution policy, and this will show you the name, the synopsis, the syntax of the command, the description of the command, some related links, and some remarks. I'll type clear, clears the screen. I'm going to go ahead and do a get command, but I'm going to go ahead and tab it out. This will show you all commands, functions, commandlets, how to call them, the version that they're working on, and some additional sources. Version is important because as there are vulnerabilities found, you may actually get new versions of a commandlet. And the versions of the commandlets will vary depending on when they are updated. Alright, so going from there, we can do get service. Well, first of all, get service by itself will list all of the services and their status, running or stopped. I want to go ahead and I want to get all services that start with Xbox. So I will do get service space double quote VM star double quote, and that will show me anything that starts with VM. And I know I just said Xbox and I typed VM, so I'm going to type Xbox now. So these are showing only 2 of them, so that was really interesting. It should be showing, oh, so yeah, this is showing Xbox Live Network Service. So it's not showing all of them. So that's a little weird. Oh, you know what? Let's just, shouldn't be case sensitive, but For whatever reason, it's showing 2 of the 4 services, not all of them. If we wanted to see ones that started with something and ended with a specific letter, we'd do star first, because again, star is a wildcard, and those are from early scripting days. You can use Windows command terminals, commands here as well. So if we're talking like directory manipulation, we want to create a new directory. We can do that from our PowerShell. So I'm going to go ahead and do clear. Like we want to change directory to C drive. We can do that. We can use dir. We can list a lot of the terminal commands here. But you know what? mkdir test. You'll notice we can make a directory here. If we do dir, we can now see the directory. However, you can also, in PowerShell, use a new item command. New item. And we do single quotes, and we give it a path. And so we'll do test 2. And then you also have to give it a item type. Item type. And what it is. Directory. You'll notice the color. So new item was the actual commandlet. This was the argument. This is one of our options, and this is what type of item we are creating. And if we do dir, we can see that our 2 folders are now there, and they're still listed as directories. PowerShell has a number of data types: booleans, bytes, characters, dates, decimals, doubles. Pretty common in any programming language, so I'm not going to go spend too much time on it. PowerShell also has very special variables, things like $error, that's going to be an array of error objects. $host, this will display the name of current hosting applications. We have a PID, we have null, we have true and false. So again, these are just special variables to pull certain data out of PowerShell. So, PowerShell scripts. We can do a simple PowerShell script. We're going to do that in Notepad. And when we save it, we have to save it as a .ps1 file. By default, you cannot just run a PowerShell script by double-clicking on it, so that's something to take note of. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead. Notepad. I'm going to go ahead and do a simple script. Write tac host hello. File, save as. I need to save it as a PS1 file. I'm going to copy it or save it on my desktop. And you'll notice, first of all, it has a PowerShell script command. So if you double click on it, it doesn't actually run it. You can right click on it, run it with PowerShell. That doesn't really do anything. We can open up PowerShell. You should be able to drag and drop it into the command terminal. Alright, apparently you can't run it in a admin. And it printed what I wanted to say. So you can give it the direct path. That's a little cumbersome, but that is definitely one way to do it. By default, there are prevention methods from not allowing scripts to be ran. So when we set execution policies by default, it is restricted. Basically, no scripts are really allowed to run. This is the default setting. If you make it on the PC, you can run it on the local PC. But if I was to copy a PowerShell from a GitHub repo, for example, it would not let me run them. I'd actually have to set the execution policy on my machine to allow for this. So, set execution policy, and then you could say what execution policy you want. I don't know what they are, so I'm going to do git help set execution policy, and then you can see remote signed, restricted, undefined, bypass, local machine. You can set whichever one you would want. Realistically, this is where you have to be careful, because you set them to unrestricted, any PowerShell script can run, and that's where it gets dangerous. So we've already done our first PowerShell script doing something like hello or hello world, and we did a write host to do that. To call the script, we normally have to do an ampersand and the direct path, or just give it the direct path. This was the old way of having to call them, so that was one of the challenges. So now let's talk about our PowerShell ISE. The ISE is actually Integrated Scripting Environment, ISE. By default, this is the editor that Windows PowerShell uses and allows us to do a lot of our coding. So we have our script interface, we have a PowerShell console, and a command module. So let's see what this looks like in Windows. So I'm going to go ahead and exit out of that. I'm going to go ahead and open up my PowerShell ISE. And sometimes it doesn't load the command window. You can just toggle it on and off. You can toggle all of this on and off. Nice thing is, when you're doing it, this is how you can verify. And you'll notice it has IntelliSense like other Visual Studio or other .NET programming packages, so that you can understand what you're supposed to be typing. It will try to sense what you're trying to do. And you can test them up here. So here's the script that I wrote, or here's the line of code that I wrote, and this is the script it's running. So if I click run, it will do it. If I fat finger something and I run it, it will also give me the error code down here. So this is a good way to see if a script is going to work as I'm working on them. Because you can do multiple lines, you can also do multiple scripts. Let's write host. And you can see the interactions, and you have one command terminal. And again, this is for testing purposes for writing your scripts. Remember, if you ever get stuck, the git help command is your friend. There are so many PowerShell commands out there that you're not expected to know all of them. So learning how to get help on certain commands is crucial. And you'll notice even here, even though it's not in the script, this is going to act like a PowerShell terminal. So you can type commands down here. So if you're doing your script and you're like, oh, well, how does this Commandlet work? I can go down to my PowerShell, type it in, and I can see my help options. So again, this is PowerShell in a nutshell. If you have any questions or concerns, please definitely feel free to reach out. Again, this is not meant to be an in-depth PowerShell course. This is more of an intro to get you familiar with PowerShell. Again, questions or concerns, please reach out.